Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to another session from the Wise Asylum. What a day. Everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong. No electric for 7 hours. That's the third power cut we've had this week. 7 hours today, 4 hours the other day, and first one was just for like 10 minutes. But what's going on there then? I do declare. It's not on. I haven't been able to do anything all day. It's outrageous. So, there you go. Hello, Debbie. Where have you been, by the way? Playing truant, have we? Hey, Paul. Love the Ivan interview. Interesting, was it not? There's some comments going on there, I have to say. So, we'll have to discuss that a bit later on, just so we can try and get a better idea of why I did that interview with him. So we'll have a look at that in a bit. I am you, Maniac. Evening all. How are you? Welcome. Anthony, good evening and good evening. Miss me, did you? I think Ray missed you. Not much to do. He'd nobody to shout at. But then Treen sometimes fills in for you there. Of course, Treen's always late, so. But yeah, we did miss you actually, Debbie. You were missed. It were obvious you weren't around. So, truant's officer will be on his way first thing Monday morning. Just thought I'd let you know. Evening, Paul. How you doing? Good tune, I noticed. Gone up the other day from the old PY music. Very interesting. A bit of deep house there. Well done, that man. Joining the dots. Greetings. Howdy, howdy. So, what a funny week we've had again. Not that much really in the news apart from Putin. What's he done? He's gone and done something so democratic. The democratic nations can do nothing but pour scorn on it, which I find rather odd. Or is it, when you consider that there we have a uber example of democracy, as Putin gives 4 regions in the Eastern Ukraine referenda, which of course goes hand in hand with democracy, does it not? However, the West, what's that done? It's only gone and blown up bloody Nord Stream 2, hasn't it? So, even more gas going down. Now, I watched an interview that were interesting the other day. It were not an interview, it was a Congress, where this particular, I think he were an ex-lawyer, obviously a congressman, and he was saying that it's been proven that the reduction in CO2 in America, which is, by the way, is the biggest reducer of CO2 in this pale horse stroke green horse agenda by far. And what were pointed out was the reason that happened was because they'd gone on to gas, which is far more less polluting. And yet, here we are. All the so-called climate numpties trying to get rid of gas when, where are they coming from? It just doesn't make sense when you get into that. But basically, the very thing that allowed America to reduce is what the Biden and his cronies are going all out to stop. So, and then they've bombed Nord Stream, which is interesting. There's a lot of shenanigans going on, but at the end of the day, we have to consider this. 3 weeks before Vlad the Impaler invaded, Biden did a speech and basically said they're going to hit the gas, the Nord Stream. And when he was quizzed on it, he just said, make no mistake, we can do it. So I'm pretty much thinking Vlad the Impaler would be pretty stupid to blow up the pipeline that cost absolute fortune, plus give up the stranglehold you've got on Germany and Europe in general. It wouldn't be a good military tactic for the guy that gained everything from the supply of gas to then demolish it and remove his ability to use it. So, yeah, who's done it? It's one of them who done it jobs, isn't it? My guess would be on that bunch of intelligence operatives from that little place back down there in Eastern Med. That would be my guess, because of course they're the ones writing the script that all these world leaders are acting. So, interesting, but yeah, we have to consider, he's just given them referendums, they voted to get in, Putin said they're going to be in for good, and immediately Zelensky applied to join NATO. And we have to keep in mind as well that, you know, when all these agreements with Russia came to be after the Soviet Union fell, you know, the biggest or prime protocol in relation to the keeping the peace between the two superpowers then was that NATO would not expand any further. So that's from 1989-90. You know, and what have they done? Well, that's all they've done, isn't it? Basically took over Ukraine and installed these biolabs, the deep state, in there, out of the way, as it were. And here we are today. Again, sort of supporting what Vlad the Impaler said in relation to him being aware of the plan since the Second World War in relation to him wanting to carve up Russia. And he made it pretty clear that his actions in the Ukraine are to prevent that plan from fulfilling. So you've got all our Looney Tune idiots over here giving it, we are democracy, look what Putin's done, we must attack his gas, and other things, which is what they're doing. I think there's 9 former Putin allies now dead, suspicious circumstances, so that's not looking good. Vlad's upped the game a bit. He hasn't actually said he's going to use nukes, but he has said that he's not ruling it out that he would do if he had to protect now what are these 4 new regions back in the hands of federal Russia. So, interesting stuff, but it's just a bit of a talking shop. It's going on. I think there's been a bit of a withdrawal by some of the Russian troops in the Donbass, but I don't think it would be classed as any kind of efforts on Ukraine's side, save that they just walked into what was an open land again. So there's not really much going on apart from the politics. But the biggest thing that's happened this week, of course, is the Bank of England has just almost suffered its Lehman Brothers. It's the Bank of England, this. And it's now decided it's going to put 65 billion influx of cash, so that's more printing of the old paper. And they're going to put £5 billion a day into the system for 13 days to stop the threat to the UK economy and the pension funds. Because, of course, the gilts are a major part of this game, and the pension funds are heavily involved in investment in those. And so they're going to buy as many bonds as necessary, says the Bank of England, to prop up this system. Now, you know, I keep a good eye on what kind of guys I call experts in these financial economic games, and you know, you pretty much get to read between the lines, and it's all this is going on, all this theatre, but that's exactly what it is. Unless a company, when its stocks go down, no longer exists, then they're just pulling down what were inflated in the first place. So you're not really any different than you were maybe 5-6 years ago, but because they've inflated all these figures, made it look fantastic and amazing, baffled everybody with the term billions and trillions. This, when they start messing with him again to put them down in the opposite way, it looks like Armageddon. But it's not really the case. Not only that, now we've been in a casino economy, a global casino economy for, well, since 2008 and before, but especially from 2008, where you've kept the interest rates low, so the hedge funds or bankers or aristocracy, yeah, or deep state, can borrow money at no cost to them and buy up everything, stock market, property, etc., etc., which is what they've been doing. So they're now at a point where it is a casino economy, and in fact, the truth of the matter is, because we are now on such a fake and fantasy system in its entirety, then to print money forever and ever and ever, amen, would keep this system in place. Have you ever given that some thought? Once you can print money, where the problem comes is when they're adding this to deflating the value of the currencies. If they were to remove that side of it, then you can print money all day, every day, because we all accept these tokens as money. We all use them. And if they were just more in without the devaluation side of things, and I did used to understand exactly how that trickery was played, but to be honest, I can't remember. But it is the case that if they could print money forever without the devaluation, etc., you won't get the inflation, you won't get any of that nonsense. And they could keep it going ad infinitum. So again, theatre. It's all theatre. And, if you don't understand these concepts, it's theatre, but it's a nightmare theatre, and everybody's dancing to it. So, interesting. Again. So the Bank of England have shit itself, almost collapsed the entire Bank of England. Again, that's a fallacy. It's all a farce. It's all garbage and rubbish. I mean, how they're manipulating this, I don't know, but obviously that's what they're doing. So they're going to keep the system propped up for a bit longer, 13 weeks as it stands. But the Bank of England also said that it would do whatever's necessary. So, not really a problem if you get down to the nitty-gritty of it. In fact, I can't remember exactly what time when I did this, but I sort of looked at, I picked a time frame at the value of all the stock markets that was, and then looked at, and then at the 2008 crash, that's what it were. I looked at all the figures of the stock markets at that point, when they were about to crash. Now, what were very interesting was this, and I did write a report about it, and it did get picked up by a lot of the financial sort of expert rags, mags, blogs, etc., because it made perfect sense. But this is what I found, and that is the stock market tally when everything was booming. Let's say the Dow were at 5,000. Let's just say that for an example. Then we got to the crash time, and they were up to 9,000. Yeah. Now, so obviously we're after 2008 actually, so it were coming to the point where they bottomed, and so I looked again at the figures, the on what it had just dropped to after such the global catastrophe as they made it out to be, just so that they could get us to bail out the banks, and add that to our debt score on our bankrupt government's bankruptcy sheet. Now, interestingly, the figure that after the crash they were claiming were being a complete Armageddon was still higher than the figures that they were in the time that I'd picked up when they were booming. Do you see what I'm saying? So the actual core value of the stock market had increased, even though they'd had this calamity crash nonsense and garbage. So for that to be, everything that was hyped up to the 2008 crash was hype. It was meaningless, only unless you were coining in off that. But ultimately, the actual real asset value of what you would say the stock market, and I didn't just do it for the Dow, I did it for all of them. Nasdaq, the lot. And they were all higher than the stock values or the ultimate top 500. It was still higher than that at a boom. So that told me back then it's just theatre. And it is theatre. But while you believe it, it works, doesn't it? And, they're going to start chanting, we have to do this now. Oh, now we have to do that. And, now we have to do this. No king contracted to the realm. No prime minister contracted to the people. Or the realm. Or anybody, apart from them that put it in there. So, interesting times, is it not? It's interesting times indeed. So they're propping it up, so you don't have to worry just yet. You might have to shit yourself at Christmas. you know, be a good consumer as they want you to be and just go and buy all your Christmas presents before December. That might be a good idea. So I've had a taste this week 3 times of what it's like with no electric. You've forgotten what it's like, and that's interesting. So I'm now prepped, fully prepared, camping stove are out, torches are out, and candles. And I thought, it's like being back in 1970s, this. It just reminded me of 1970s. You sat down to watch telly, bang. Oh dear, all the electric's gone off. And of course they were blaming the old unions at that time, which was probably true, because they had people walking out if somebody looked at them different and proper and improper. So you can imagine how that'd be today with the offending agenda going on about how everybody's to be offended, shit themselves, cry their eyeballs out, and report you to the state. Innit? So what an absolute load of shit today, because I've had about 20 minutes. It's a good job I finished that etymology shindig yesterday. I have to say, after part 2, when I started to do part 3 this week, I went extra excited on just checking out his definitions on some of his words, and lo and behold, found them to be wanting. That being the case, I've sort of rewritten part 3 to this, but also left off a massive part of his end data because I didn't have the time to check his definitions. And the ones that I did check, I was finding definitions that were slightly different and sort of shifted the narrative of it slightly. Still in sync with it, but a bit more. So I'm wondering if this guy's just sort of winged a few. Maybe got fed up halfway through his video and just thought, well, I'll just throw that in anyway. So I would heed caution in general in taking such as that as verbatim. However, going through it as I've gone through it, 1, 2 and 3 parts, I have basically added what I see, because of course I'm putting it on the website, because quite a lot of his stuff, his way he thought it wasn't the way I'd have thought it, and so I've added mine. So, but especially so in this part 3, there's not that much of his in there, and especially the last 20 minutes of it, I just thought he's just winging it a little bit there. You know, there were 1 or 2 points that made sense, but not everything. So let's have a look at what you guys have been up to. Stand for Truth, good evening, Indy. Joining the dots, greetings. Debbie says, we had a truant officer living on our street when I was a child. I kid you not. He was married to the knit nurse. Well, double bubble cash in it, all coming in off schools. But you are definitely a naughty girl, I have to say. Evening Sean says, L. You're welcome, bro. You are most welcome. Matt says, an emoji. I ain't got a clue what that means. Louise says, hey Louise, what do you think of Ismail Perez and all the interstellar galactic off-planet news? What? I have absolutely no idea about the intergalactic off-planet news. In fact, all the news that I'm interested in is down here on terra firma. You know what I'm saying? I did once have a visit of an extraterrestrial in my house. After I sort of shitted myself for that instant, we communicated, and I've not seen him since. So I don't know what that was all about. And maybe they were just being a bit nosy. But yeah, I have experienced that, and I do know that these... See, I'd class it, they're not, for me, extraterrestrial, they are interdimensional. So therefore they are extraterrestrial, as it were. But yeah, so they do exist, without a shadow of a doubt. And he wanted to help me, he said. Anyway, that's enough of that. But no, as a general rule, my dear, there's more than enough shit going on terra firma for me to be concerning myself with what's going on up there outside the dome. Which I saw an interesting video where they made flat Earth and put a domed sort of glass bead on top, and then showed you how through running a light from the outside of the dome, the sun would actually operate in a very similar way to how it actually does. I didn't give it too much of a look, so because it's not really my bag, as I've said. It doesn't really matter at this stage whether we're flat, pink, purple, round, oblong, square, or a star. I'm not really asked. Here we are, and that's just taking me off the important stuff down here, so I'm not interested. A says he's late. You're very naughty, but we'll let you off here because you're not usually late. Paul says, hello, Treen. Is Treen here? What the bloody hell's Treen doing here? I thought you didn't get out of bed till 10 o'clock at night, being a vampire. What's going on? So, Treen says, yes, Paul, couldn't the video on YouTube froze my screen for ages? Huh? Okay. Debbie says, it's the worst pantomime I've ever seen. What was? What would you have I missed something? I'm missing something. Oh, gilt bonds. Yeah. But this is what your pensions are into, isn't it? Isn't it a Canadian pension fund controls the National Lottery, amongst a lot of other things? How has a Canadian pension fund managed to grab the UK lottery? I don't know. So, howdy all from down under. Urukanji, hello there. That's an interesting name you've got going on there. Colonel Patsy, good evening. Good evening to you. Recall the 70s blackouts. Yep. Anybody that's... See, I don't remember much. I was figuring, because obviously I was a boy then. I'm only 22. So, but everybody told me. They all told me about it. You know. Yeah, so we're remembering that. I'm a 69er, so don't really remember the 60s. No, not 60s, 70s. This was a video that showed me there was a US plane over the pipe at the time the leak started. I think there were 3 seismic picked up by Norway or somebody. Not sure who it were, but somebody's picked up it. But Biden said 3 weeks before we know when threats were going on, and they were, well, if you do that, I'm bringing my dad out, and blah blah blah. You know, when they were measuring the cocks before he actually invaded. I've seen it, and he says without a doubt that if he does invade, there'll be no more gas. So, and obviously, being on the back of the fact that Vlad's just done the example of democracy and given referendums, that's what you get. So does that not tell us that these fruit bats running our show, though they may cry democracy, are nothing of the sort? And I think we should be a bit more worried about that right now than what Vlad's actually doing, because he does actually seem to be just doing what he said on tin, and he just wants back what were previously Russian territories, because most of the people that live in their territories are Russians. With, you know what I'm saying? It's like Wales coming over and nicking everything right up to Lincoln. They wouldn't be right happy, would they? You know what I'm saying? They'd make talk Welsh, they'd have signs up with Welsh. Have you been to Wales? All of a sudden you're in a foreign country, it's like, what? Who's that? What? So you would be angry. You'd just instantly make you talk foreign language, and you'd have to start shagging sheep. Because they're very well related to Yorkshiremen at Welsh, so I'm told. And not so anyway. Right, so trains get excited there. This was a video that showed me. Yeah, so we're not really interested in any of that malarkey. But there is one thing I want to start to discuss, because this is... if you've got any wealth about you, your family has been wealthy for time, you know, through the ancestry, but you're not aristocracy level, but you've got some. Okay, you've got land, you've got it set up in a trust, you've got all sorts of things that you would expect people that have been wealthy for a long time would carry out in order to secure the wealth to pass it down through the family. So basically, I don't know how to kick off this really, but it's quite worrying, because they've found a perfected system to take that off you. And so you can sort of pan it down to about a 30-year agenda. And first, of course, maybe before the internet started to take off big, the agenda was to get somebody into your family, by whichever part of the family it may be. Do you know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be into the actual family running the estate, as it were. So the first part of the agenda is getting somebody in. These people are then profiling you. They want to know everything about you and about everybody in the family. All right. So if you're in this position, and you know you're always coming across people that are trying to take it, because that's pretty much where wealthy people spend most of the time doing, which is keeping it. So you know, and just start to consider: have you ever had somebody that's come into the one part of the family, and certain people don't take to this person, but nobody seems to take any notice? Because they're satisfying everybody's needs, they know what your needs are, and they're going to satisfy them. They're going to be essential. They're going to put themselves as an essential part of your gig, as it were. So, what starts to happen? So, as the internet came online properly and everything from the States was moving online, this opened up the capacity for this blag that's going on. Now, it's a big blag. It's very dangerous blag, and if I were to give you an example, then Dr. Errol Shipman is the example that would sort of give you an idea of what this is going to show you. Okay? So, what they do, first thing they do is steal the identities of those inside these families that are beneficiaries of the estate. Okay, it's essential. So what they're going to do is manipulate to their benefit the least amount of beneficiaries to ultimately the estate. Now, okay, did you understand that what I've said? Because this isn't just happening at the higher middle class. This is happening across the board, and down to the bottom. This is the same cult that's that are basically child trafficking, taking your children off you, and you're never going to see them again. Right? This is how it's going to go in. But we'll get into detail on that in a little bit, because I don't want to jump the gun. So the game is they have to profile you. They know your weaknesses, they know your strengths, they know your needs, and they're going to make sure with the cult that they can position themselves to be an essential part of your makeup. Okay. But the red flags is always there are some within the group, the family, that don't like them, can't take to them, and on odd occasions, just out of blue, will give you a bit of an inkling to it. But as I've said, they're good at this game, and they, in general terms, those cautions are ignored because you're getting something. Okay. So once you've got your profiled, they can see the tree, as in who's going to have control, who's going to get power, who's going to get a good share of it, yeah? So that's where they're looking for. They're looking for them people. So they steal your identity, and what they do then, you start... Now, this is because of the internet. This has gone green light because the internet is the very system that gives this ability for them to do this. That's important as well. So before the internet came online like it did and everybody was using it, the first part of it was just getting the self-installed in a position of what they could know as much as they could about the entire organisation, yeah? So once they got online, what they start to do then is they steal your identity, and they might mix up a middle name and just slightly off, because what they're doing is they're going to set up a network that the computer itself doesn't see. And so slight name changes, slight number changes for companies on Companies House is the method that they use in order to have installing your identity. They start to set up companies in a name that can be tied to that at the end of it. So it all comes fizzes round back to that. We don't go on ass. So let's say they've now got 3 companies set up in one person's stolen name, okay? So you might have pharmacy, you might have solicitors, you might have... So they'll set it up, they're starting to build a network that gives them their own solicitors, yeah? Everything that they're going to need in order to create this little empire is under their control. Even social services. Okay, so social services now will hire out. So if they're going to be taking kids off, what they'll tend to do is we'll go to LinkedIn or such like, advertise a job. somebody that's qualified as a social worker will come in and carry out that. So they're just hiring them for that. They don't know that this is what's happening. And so the social service will just hire it. And it's usually going through an agency. Now, the agency it's going through is one of these companies that's set up on the back of your stolen identity. All right? And it's acting as an agent for the state. So this is how the corporations are working. So social services need somebody, they go to that agency, the agency is advertising and they're picking some, unwitting guy or female to be employed. And it's them they'll send to go and take your kids off you. Alright, that's how it's working. But this network in the background is building companies on your stolen identity. Now, what they also do is you start taking out mortgages, these companies, okay? And loans. And they're buying properties. Okay? Now, these, obviously, they've bought this mortgage for this property for a company that's your name. And they're going to pay this. They're going to keep paying this mortgage as it goes. Now, the aim of the game is to keep this going. So when you get to the point where you've almost completed the bag around this organisation, once they start to satisfy those loans for those companies, then what they do is kill the one whose name they've stolen, because then they can act as that person making this claim for these assets. All right. Now you might have to. Let me tell you something now. If you've got wealth, I'm guaranteeing you're being targeted by these networks, because this is across the board. This is the cult stuff, the secret societies. This is what they've done. So they pre-prepped before we had all this, everything went online, and set up this new shadow system to nick everything, basically. Okay. Now, so they're achieving this with all these people. They nick your names. They'll do something called county lining with you. So they'll open up another council tax for this property that they've got in your name, but they'll give you a different number. So the council tax account is a different number. And because each county has a separate computer system, neither of the computers are registering that there's a secondary. Yeah? So to all intents and purposes, they create you a new metaverse entity in another county. They're buying properties, your name's in it for paying council tax. As far as that county is concerned, they have a name and an address, and they have the documents online to prove it, because everything's being proven online. Documents are being sent online, etc. So they're building up pharmacy as a company. So they've got your thing. They're buying creating a company, and it's a pharmacy. So then they're delivering drugs. Pharmacies, you'll deliver for us, no problem. The company that's delivering is controlled by this cult. The poor guy driving it has been hired by this cult through an agency, so he doesn't even know he's being employed by this network. Do you get me? Now, mental health, okay? So, for instance, if you've got no drug record, no medication even, no mental health, no issues whatsoever, no criminal record, they are going to struggle with you as a member of that family to play a lot of their games that they play in order to secure your assets. Because, they can't just jump down through your door and accuse you of being a mental retard, drag it off, everybody's going to believe it. There's no record of that. In fact, quite the contrary, that's not going to be something they can actually do. So they need a plant in these mental health institutions, whom, if you're brought in there, will find something. And so this is how they can control situations in their entirety, from coming to your door, even taking you in an ambulance. Because remember, ambulances are private companies now. Yeah. The paramedics driving the ambulance don't know that they're working for this cult operation, do they? They're paramedics. Yeah. So so they're getting it slowly as they get bedded into you, and they're creating these companies, which is giving them the capacity to further control you, using the now corporate civil state system. And of course, then they have you in the hospitals. They have the people in the hospitals. And these are the ones that you class as Dr. Shipman. Okay? So if you're working in the NHS, we know that a lot of people have left. You that is still in there, you need to keep your eyes out, because if you're seeing some things you don't like in and around certain operatives, then this is what you're looking at. This is what they're working to. And they tend to work the night shift as well, is important. Okay, so you've got a great doctor and a great team in the daytime, but at night time, if they want to pop you off, you're going to have had a major, oh dear, what a catastrophe, and he died. She died. Yeah. So, and with what's just happened in the last 2.5 years, has upgraded this system in a massive way, which is why I'm saying to you, this is the shadow system that's a part of it, coming out of the secret societies, okay? Because it was pre-prepped. They already had this system ready and ready to go once they got everybody into the system. So you diverted onto the metaverse as in coming from Zuckerberg, but the real metaverse is they are creating another you in commerce online, getting loans against it, mortgages, but then they're satisfying them. This is the important bit. And once they've satisfied them, you're ready for a chopping block, because they don't need you anymore. They've got one beneficiary out of the asset base, another less that's going to eventually pick up the estate if you're wealthy. They've accumulated properties, businesses, all sorts of stuff by stealing your identity in another county, even another country. So as soon as you're knocked off, they've got life insurance policies on you. Your meta or shadow self that they've created, they benefit from everything, and they just pull it all in, and it can stay going. It can stay going. Yeah. And this is going on everywhere. This is not just a little shindig. This is part of the big system. So Shipman showed you how it goes on in the hospitals, because they were pulling in wills, were they not? As well as population control. So there are all sorts of shenanigans, so we got a taste of it there. Fred West, Cromwell murders. Again, I've read his psychological reports from when he was inside, and he were basically saying he didn't act alone. They were part of a cult. Yeah. So this is what they're setting up. This is what's set up. Now, electronic. So there's an app called Hooker Watch, for example. Now, this Hooker Watch is an entity entirely set up by this cult. So they're in your town, encouraging your shops to use it, which then you use it, you've given them all your bank details. They start to know all about you. If you have enough money, you're going to become a target. Is this making sense to you? This is the real metaverse, or the dark web, or the ultra dark web, as it were. The dark web, we could say, are just all the URLs that Google no longer brings to you when you search. The ultra dark web is where all this dark stuff's going on. So now, a major part of their control is what they do. They're buying software from the dark web. Okay, get this. This is important. That gives them the ability to tap into your entire internet world. So first they tap into your router, they become the administrator. They get into your phone, they become the administrator. You're secondary. It's as though it's their phone. They're collecting every single thing you do. They can get into your smart telly and watch you through that. They can activate anything smart. Now, if you get smart and get a new router and get a new phone, not a problem. The software that they have, because it's tied to the location, will grab it within hours and off you go again. Now, This is the real important bit. Why do they do that? Well, first, it's to get all your data, but what's more important is once they've got access to your IP network at your home or office or your phone, everything they do in the background, setting up your companies, on your stolen identity, buying things off the dark web, all the financial transactions that are going on in relation to these companies that they've set up on your stolen identity, every transaction is being logged as being carried out from your home. It looks like you are doing it. You are that person, and even though you're not. Do you get that? That's so important that you understand that. Now, what they also do, if you're ever finding phones, Lexus, whatever the fuck, Alexis, all these transmitters, iPads, all these things, if you ever find them in your house, you don't know where they are, in your garden, in your shed, in your car, they've put them there to use, to access. Yeah? So if they're getting lesser signals, they'll put something like that in to boost the signal to get you, so that they can continue to use your network platform. This is scary stuff, people, because I'm telling you now, I've been looking into this now. Well, I can honestly say to you, when I set off in the 90s, this was the network I knew I was up against. Okay? Not doing this side of things, they were a different game for me then. But it's the same cult, right? So, oh shit, I've lost my train of thought. Oh, bugger. What was I going to say? Right, that's right. I have now seen the evidence trail for this system. Okay, so the last couple of weeks, I've been shown this entire system. How they do the false names, how they play it, how they get into your system, that they become administrator rights. Right? My phone, I've had a look, somebody else is administrator now. Do you know who that is? I know it's the police, that. Okay, I know that. And this is what's happening with all your tech. Now, I've been having a look into it, just looking at some of these hacker videos to see what the hell does what I've seen on paper stand up when you look at how this technology works. Because let's be frank, we haven't got a clue how this technology works, have we? Very few people actually know what you... And so I've seen the way they use these companies for money laundering, you know, the big boys, etc., when you're finding these one offices with millions of companies addressed to it as their head office. We've seen that. We know that's money laundering, amongst other things. But this is... what I've just learned would never have come to me without it having been presented to me and then explained to me and then shown me the physical evidence. It would never have occurred to me that this is how they play this game. So I was looking then to see, does it add up? Is this how they do it? And it's exactly how they do it. Exactly. It's quite amazing how they can become administrators of your technology. And if they didn't want you to know and you weren't savvy, you wouldn't know. So this is how high-end intelligence operate. They become administrator, they're in, and they keep quiet then. They're not making any messes. They don't do that with me. I can see them sometimes following behind me. You know, I've been looking into stuff, come up across a website, took some data, gone carrying on searching, gone back to that, press refresh, and it's gone. So they used to follow me in my searches. As I said, it was getting a little bit bad not long ago, so I got rid of Firefox and updated the OS X. That kicked them out, or they're just being extra careful now, which doesn't really matter because I don't do anything on the internet that would warrant anybody's attention apart from them that are setting up these systems and don't want anybody to know. So it's essential that you start to think of this in this manner. Now, what I learnt in this week, just looking at these hackers, just how they set the systems up. So they use Pine phones, and when you got a Pine phone, you're basically setting up a Linux system in it. So there's nothing, you're not getting anything from another source installed on your tech, so they can't hack it. They can't hack into it because you're coding it. It's a straightforward. So the Pine phone is what I found, and then you build it as though you're building a Linux system in any online kind of thing, and that then blocks them. That they're not going to get into it that way. What else did I learn? That I mean, the biggest way they get into you is if they send you something and you click on it. That's one of the easiest ways they get you. If they can sucker you into something, so you take an action and you press it, you open it, that's how they get in. That's the easy way. The other way is they've got this method where they can pull up your IP. They can't. It's not as easy as they said to get in on your IP. It's the geolocation that's important, which is why you can't get rid of it. On the Pine phone, you can. Because unless you can put the software in that's operated geolocation, then there is no geolocation. Now, what were I going to say there, as it were? Oh, Ray, are you there? We've got a fruit bat. Ray, are you awake? Fruit bat city's on. We need to get rid of them spunkers. Dear. Interesting. They don't come out that often, do they? But they do come out now and again. So as long as you're talking about stuff that really nobody cares about, you're not so bad. Okay. So that's just, if you're there, Ray, can you sack them? YouTube seem to have decided who's allowed to be my moderators these days. I can't change it. Although I haven't tried for a while, I must do that first thing when I get off here. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, they'll let me know. I'm not really bothered. They won't like this coming out because this is amazing. This is how they do it. Ray's there, and he says it's all about algorithms monitoring you and learning you, yeah. Then they can predict your every move. Check out Cambridge Analytica. How do you think Trump won? Precisely. I were one of the first to put out a compendium of data on how Trump got in due to Robert Mercer and giving him the buzzwords, make America great again, etc. That's as soon as Trump started using them, because his whole campaign was flailing. He came in with Cambridge Analytica and various others, and gave him everything they collected through Facebook and all your social media. And they had, I think, 4 phrases that is what were the most used phrases by Americans, and over a period of maybe 5-10 years, and gave them to him. And as soon as he started using them, Mercer pumped money in as well. Bump, he went through the roof. So yeah, I know exactly what you're saying there, Ray. So we still got one of them chat things on there, matey. I don't know whether you can see it. So this is what you need to be looking at in your own worlds if you've got a bit. And like I said, they're obviously targeting those just local families that have all held wealth, you know, being local business people, etc., etc. Because of course, to destroy any nation, you have to destroy the middle class and the upper middle class, because they are the folks that can actually afford to buy from England or from America instead of having to go for the cheap shit from China. Again, you can see how that's a crown. When I say crown, I'm talking Holy See. That's why they moved everything to China. It gives them that capacity to help. It undermines your nation from building your own stuff because China's offering it at half a p. You get me? So, but the most important thing that I've learnt in this couple of weeks is the people that have died, they've been murdered. And this is happening right now. And now, interesting, after 5 years of trying, the police have now took this on board because they could not denounce the documentation. Okay, now it's gone right high, so we're going to have to wait and see what happens. My guess is They may try and fudge it. If they do, then that won't wash. It won't wash at all. So that's what I wanted to explain about how these systems are starting to build and work. And once now that's in the mix, we've seen that we've broken that spell. I'm pretty sure the same kind of format would sort of be functioning in any other blanks that's going on. So you kids out there that have been encouraged and hooking up all these apps, you have absolutely no idea who owns that app. None whatsoever. You need to stick to the ones that we know are solid. Now, and we know they're not solid as in they're acting on your behalf, but still you like to PayPal, and we know they're sure, we know they're part of the system, but you have recourse. These, such as Hooker Watch and other local apps, little apps, that you don't want to touch them, because the people that own them are just this network and the companies that have been built on stealing somebody's identity and shifting them into another county. So that, in my opinion, is perhaps the most important data I've found this year. Because if you have wealth, you need to start to think about it and start to just give a bit of hindsight to the last 10, 20, 30 years, especially people that some of your families have warned you about many times but have not been taken seriously. Because all they need to do, once you've created those companies to your meta name, is satisfy all the debts to it. You're no longer required. And one less for the eventual aim which you're after is taking the lot. You dig? Less beneficiaries, less to have to knock off at the end. And this is how they're doing it. And they're working it up in the pyramid. That's what it is. So they're taking kids off people. They're putting people down as mental health. And if you go in hospital and you're a target, you're going to be murdered. And it's wealth. Wealth is the key. Because that's what they're playing. That is what they're after. Nothing else. They're after stealing your identity so they can carry on to use it once you've gone. Claim everything that they've set up on that false one as though it's you. And as I said, because they're using your internet in its entirety to carry out all the transactions afforded to this fake identity and the fake companies of it, you prove it. Well, who's going to prove it? Because you've gone. You're dead. Keep that in mind, people. It's massive. Massive, and they're a long way on it. They've been doing it for, you could say 10 years they've been. Now, they're using Companies House beta to do this. Which, if you understand how that works, on Companies House, you have to put your accounts in, etc. Any changes to directors, secretaries, etc. have to be recorded with Companies House. On beta, it's sort of, they've said, okay then, well, we know you're just setting up a company to see if it works. You have no idea whether it'll work or not. If it folds, we don't want to need any paperwork off you. None the wiser are we. So a lot of these companies that you see being set up and going before years up, this is how they're using them. Changing directors. And again, so once they build it, so let's say you've got 5 people in this extended family who are beneficiaries to your estates. Oh, bugger. You're the target, you're the main targets. So once you've set up all these thingies with your children, they do with your offspring as well. So once you've got your family set, you're targeted because you're a beneficiary. The whole family is going to get used to set up these fake identities in other counties and then set up these companies on them on Companies House. Beta. They're going to loan on it, they're going to mortgage on it, satisfy it. Once they're all satisfied, that's when you know they're coming for you. They deliver in pharmacy so they can get you that way. You know, you think your pharmacy's delivering it? No, this is a poison batch. Who's going to be the wiser? You've dead at home. Medication, illness, mental health, got you that way. And they've also got you in the hospitals themselves. Now that is very, very, very important information. And that needs to be took on board. And you might need to watch that a few times if you think, well, if you're wealthy, if you've got any kind of wealth at all, even if you own your own home, even if you've got kids and you're a bit, let's say, vulnerable, everything now is asset. This system is trying to pull in every asset that's afforded to our nations. And that includes your offspring, because of course we're on Sesquiv Trust. You're dead, or you not. So, okay, we'll not further that any further today, because it's going to be an ongoing thing. As I learn more, I'm going to keep adding to it, because it's important we get this. If you want to save your country, the only way you're going to do it is to understand that it's not class against class. It's got to be everybody seeing how everybody's being shafted. And then once the spell's broken, it's not a secret anymore. They can't use it if you know about it, because you'll see it. It's very scary stuff indeed. Now, Ivan. Okay, so I've read the comments. All fair concerns, I would say. Why did I do that? Well, why did I do that? Because we're in a pickle at the moment. We've got a monarch that's not contracted to the realm, but claiming to be the monarch, because he hasn't done it at the coronation hall. And we've got a no-contract Prime Minister. He can do a lot. Now, we've got this oddbod called Simon, pulling himself up, claiming to be the son of Camilla and Charles. Now, I've looked at him. He certainly doesn't look anything like Charles, but he does look like Camilla. Now, from what I found, Camilla was born in 47, Charles in 48. And that Charles and Camilla didn't actually meet until 1970. Yet Simon was born in 1966. So how could that be important, let's say? Well, let's just say we've got a complete and utter fake-up fantasy incumbent. A queen consort that nobody in the right mind would expect to have sitting atop our throne. Is that not true? What are they trying to do here? Create an absolute fruit bat monarch family for us to suck on by bringing in Camilla's love child. So that's a potential, if we go with Nostradamus, that this person, whoever comes in after Charles, isn't who we'd expect. So in my opinion, that wouldn't be a good egg. At all. So Ivan, who is Ivan? Ivan is, from what I can gather, a very nice chap. I didn't feel at any point in that conversation that I felt that he were after your money, he were after your wealth, he were after your land, he were after power, in essence. He was pretty clear that he would be for, but he says United Kingdom, okay, so that's one thing that we today know as English and England, that is just not going to wash. Second is the choosing of a monarch on hereditary protocol. Again, we are very aware that that's now impossible to do given the amount of skullduggery that's gone on with our elite over the last 1,000 years and some. So we also know that hereditary isn't going to cut it no matter how they did anybody, because we know that there would be a blag somewhere down the line, which means you're going to be mistaken at some point in your tracing. We know ancestry and all these things are there to obfuscate. They're there to excite people that didn't know that they go back 2 generations and you had a princess. You know what I'm saying? Gets you fixed into this mindset that the elite have to be protected at all costs, when the elite today are not our elite. They're a foreign force, landowning aristocracy, and they've secured our state and secured our monarchical realm as a mimic. We know this. We know this. I can understand why people have put over that kind of comments, because we know. However, we've got to look at it another way. the protocols are clear. The last nation to be destroyed is England, because everything else in the West is based on it. Okay, I'm talking about America, Canada, and then we can't say West, can we, really, because Australia and New Zealand are way down there in the under. So, but you know what I'm saying. The systems that were born, they were born off English, off the English constitutional realm. So it's important, and they fronted the world takeover with that nonsense as well. So we all get bagged as the same kind of, we must be benefiting from it. Well, that's absolute nonsense. The only beneficiaries today are immigrants. So as you get knocked off, in comes another bunch, because they need a set amount of people or persons, trusts, to abuse in order to keep the machine going. So if they get, if all of a sudden mass genocide of white people on their own fruition takes place, then they must replace them. Whether they replace them beforehand or after is irrelevant. That is how it works. So, these things all interconnect. Everything interconnects, doesn't it? When you're looking at it like this, to be fair. Whoa, we got fruit back. Can you block him, man? Is it not possible to sack him completely? We don't want to look at your filth, son. We're all grown up here. We know exactly what a Panani looks like, and we know what a Willy looks like. We've seen it all, done it all. We're not interested, pal. So whoever you are, little bot or little whoever, 77th Brigade, 8500, whoever you are, go away. We're not interested. Anyway, so that's that. So, I've completely forgot what we're talking about, because I've prepared nothing today, because I couldn't get on the fucking internet. So that's a bit of a shame. But you need to become aware of what I've just expressed. If you have any wealth at all, your friends have wealth. Because if we can't save our own wealth here in our local wealthy families, we are going to lose the nation. Because once the middle class goes, and there you can see Bank of England, they're holding it at a precipice with the pensions. Yeah, so we have to start looking at it like this, stick together kind of stuff here, guys. That's what it's all about. Sticking together, not hating each other because one sees himself as working class and the other sees himself as an office tackle. It doesn't matter. Together, we had a good nation because it worked. Right, so we can finish off the etymology, which is not actually that much of it now, because, as I said, when I checked out some of his definitions, they were incorrect. And a lot of what it were said after, I just thought, no, there was probably no need to put that in. If you didn't get the gist of it from the other, what had been already, you're never going to get the gist of it. You might as well get back to Coronation Street. So I think he shouldn't necessarily have done that. I believe there's a part 2, so I might have a gander at that. But I have now put it up on site as a full written work. So, of course, it's got a lot of my take in it as well. So, if anybody wants to go through it again, you don't want to have to start videos and listen to my gob. You've now got it in writing, and you can copy and paste it. As easy as that, innit? So, best of both worlds, I say. So I will have a look at the 2, and just to see if I can add anything to it, because it is very interesting. But I can see a lot of what he's talking about is it's low grade insights into the Masonic script, but it's not at the highest. So I'm not so sure when he's claiming to be on 33rd degree knowledge that is the case. So in fact, as I was reading it, I just thought that somebody's told you that's the case, and you obviously think you're getting it from where it's not at all. You blocked him channel, but somehow they're still sending YouTube. Yeah, so there we go. That's intel, isn't it? It's probably 770 Brigade or 8500. They're the little shitbags. They're actually young kids just come out at cadets, PlayStation mad, and going, yeah, do that to him. He's horrible. We don't like him. And a bit like baby boomers, they believe it because they have no idea of bit of research. Is this guy or this woman as fruit bats? They're saying, just told, don't they? Debbie wants a sex pest. Do you want a sex pest, Debbie? Naughty. Hey, Ray might be up for that. He likes the shit at you. Into S&M and all that. Ever had a bit of that? Ooh. So, let's not get too far off topic. That's you guys talking to yourself. So let's have a look at the etymology again. It's not actually that long, as I said, so... Boom. So it says, through commerce monopoly, commerce, it should have been a comma, monopoly is created. This creates billionaires at the expense of others. The billionaires use corporations to act as the arms through which they can consume more without personal liability. Persons applaud this system by holding great respect for those billionaires because they have a secret hope that they too can become a billionaire. Thus, those who lose offer energy to those that have without the recognition of the fact that it is at their expense. So you're swearing against these people and you're not recognising at all that it's that energy you're giving them that's actually feeding them. It says, those who offer the energy to those that have, without the recognition of the fact it's at their expense, and that this is the pyramid built by you. So we're all building the pyramid. The soul is captured with the enthusiastic slavery of those the system supplants. The means to this position is the religious worship of money. Thus money is the one world religion itself because we take it on faith that in using the denominations of money, example 5, 10, 20 and 50, we hold the faith that we will be remunerated for the value as set by the creators of the money. Which, as I said at the beginning, that is actually a fact of the situation we are in. As long as we accept that that is how it is, they can print as much as they want, but they have to remove the connection to the devaluation of it. So that's where we are today. They completely and utterly create all the money. Yeah? So that is actually quite right. And there's, like I said before, if we all agreed that cat shit was money, then cat shit would be money. It's whatever we actually decide and agree on to be what we want to use as a form of exchange. Once it's agreed, all is well. But when you hand that creative force or power over to a bunch of shysters, you get what we've got today. So, let's have a look. Today we experience the devaluation of that money made so by those who create it because they've taken it back into their own hands, which is exactly what they're doing, isn't it? And that network we've just explored is that. Yet it was you who enabled this position through faith. A denomination in English is a group of religious congregations having distinct faiths: Catholic, Protestant, Islamic, Buddhist, Jainism and Shinto, etc. Money, therefore, is simply a metonymy for our energy, and that is absolutely correct. Metonymy is a figure of speech consisting of the use of the name of one thing for that of another, of which it is an attribute or with which it is associated. The word crown is a fine example because when you hear it, you automatically assume the monarch, when within the one world religion it presents the temple crown or the money temple. The first metonymy we face in our lives is our name. You believe the name is that which your mother and father gave you, and you are correct. But once that name is offered up to the temple as a registration, the name becomes a corporate identification stamp that we associate with I. The identification is an appellation, the appel or apple of sin, that we bite and thus forget our natural self. The I by substituting an identity or ID entity. Thus, ID is a Freudian psychological term, communication with the subconscious, which correlates with the Hungarian del, meaning south. We are stuck in the paradigm of the Southern Chakra energetic system, the Hotel California of the Eagle. So, welcome to the Hotel California. Yeah? that little shindig that the Eagles wrote, where we checked in, but without a concerted effort on our part, we can never check out. This is the reason all corporate governments on the planet require of you to carry and identify with their name, so back to horse symbolism, and never the real man or higher being that you are. So this is why we badge on about man is not person. Yeah? It's clear in all the literature, everything's against person. And never the real name or higher being that you are. Have we forgotten the old-time caution we gave to our offspring that they should never call each other names? As to do so is not very nice. Now, we all assumed, didn't we? They mean no telltale calling, like, oh, I don't like you anymore, you're not my friend, you spat at me or whatever. We thought that was name calling, but really the older version of it is that we should never call each other names. I mean, by default, once I get to know somebody, I will automatically give them another name. I'm not acknowledging the name that's in this system for them. Do you get me? And when you understand the occult and how the spiritual world works, especially the nefarious, they're not seeing you in my communication. Do you know what I'm saying? Because I'm not calling you by the name that they're looking for. And now, the state. Anyway, we'll not get into that. Today we will see this as meaning not to be derogatory to one another, without realising the real meaning is that to use the name is to remove the manhood, male and female. Not only that, but it has become an obsession for many to continue the family name, when in fact it is a continuation of the servitude brought about by the surname. There are no surnames in the biblical script. To ensure this format is set in flesh, it is the intention of the Babylonian priesthood to insert their ID inside the body as some form of RFID microchip. That would indeed be game over as relates to ever climbing out of the Whore of Babylon. You would become an ID entity, complete without recourse. Analysing the initial mimic shows itself in the newborn baby being docked in the through the machinations carried out by the midwife or midwoman, as I found out last week, in the hospital ward in which the placenta is said to be abandoned by the mother, and thus is birthed the first title. This is expanded as the registration of the baby or honey producer for the gods is carried out with the registry office, at which point the offspring is assigned the surname, and thus dead in the world of commerce. The initial title created in the ward is then sent to a government agency, and on to London, in which stands the Queen, now King of Persons. The fraudulent monarch takes the chair of the estates, while the consort takes up the assets of all persons pulled in by the monarch. Currently, this would be Charles and Camilla. So Charles is going to carry on what Mummy did, and Camilla is going to take over all your assets. And is she not the horse's head, as many have described her? So again, back to Ivan. Because I didn't finish that, did I? Oh, I stopped doing it. But what I'm saying is with Ivan is this. It's pretty clear that he's old school, and all he knows is what old school knows, what baby boomer generation knows. They don't know any different. He can only research based on what he knows. And he can only conclude then based on what he knows. But here's what I say. We're at a point now where we need to look into who are these people that could possibly be this guy that Nostradamus suggests is going to be somebody we don't know, or somebody we weren't expecting. It's probably the better term, because Ivan is known, and so is this Simon. Now, bearing in mind as well that they changed it so that Catholics could be the monarch as well, and now that everything's under Vatican II, that may be a big point that they're looking to install. So that would be interesting. We'd need to know if Ivan is affiliated with any of the old Catholic orders. We would need to know that. So that's a question that I will have to put to Ivan next time. But let me just put this straight. Back in the day, way back, when I were doing my thing everywhere, and I were having a spat on Twitter, and so it will before people realised about corporations, before they realised that the actual government was a corporation, that the courts were corporations. This is before that. So I knew about it because, of course, John knew about it, and the scene at the time, we already knew about this corporation. So my job then was to completely, because all protests back in the day, everybody was going, the state is shit, let's kill the state. And I said, look, what you need to understand is you want to protect your state because it's your state that's being taken over. And you need to understand that what your enemy is the corporations, because they've took over the state. And that took a while for people to do, but slowly but surely we got it in the mix, and everybody were talking corporate then in a couple of years, as though they'd always spoken in that way. So that were a great thing to achieve. Now, back in the day on Twitter, I was having a right shindig, and there were a lot of people commenting on this topic I put up. And I said, basically, the government is bankrupt. Like all bankrupt companies, it wants to be folded. All contracts are off, all bets are off that it's ever contracted with. So that's United Nations, it's NATO, it's the banking system, all this bankruptcy stuff. We're off. And I put, we go back to the realm. It was as simple as that. And one guy come up and he put that, and then a line, is, and another line, genius. Right? And then underneath he said, but I'm just a constitutional professor of law. And I thought, yeah, it is genius. Because what I said after that, I said this as well, was, what we need to do, that's what I said, and I've missed this bit. I said, we don't need a sitting monarch, because that's where the shenanigans come in. We need to reform the constitution that we agree with. So there'd be a bit of American Republican involvement, but more importantly, we'd have to ensure that it means what it says and there's no room for skullduggery. And then we put that on the throne. It's not a power game anymore, is it? It removes all battles for power over the actual realm. Do you get me? So that's what I said back then. And it still holds today. If we could find a monarch who would be happy to sit on there till we put everything back right, but then reform the constitution so it's solid and it means what it says, there's no room for definitions change, there's no room for adjudgments or judging of any of it. It is as it is, and that means what it says. And who'd be happy to do that and then put that on the throne as his chosen heir, would that not be something worth considering? I think it would, in all truth. So anyway, again, with Ivan, I agree, I know where your concerns are coming from. Personally, I would think he's a bit too old to be changing his mind to actually come in tune with the truths of the matter. It may be a big ask for him. But look at what he's done. He's already been writing to the Queen from that standpoint. So he's not feigning it. He's not pretending. In his eyes, he is the hereditary rightful King of England. And that deserves attention. It deserves at least to be looked at and have a look at it. And as I said, I put a lot forward to him there. Whether Ivan can actually... Anyways, Freudian said that they called him Alfred. It would be quite good if he could be... if he actually... that's what we need. Something like an Alfred. Who's going to pull in everything that is already that's good and get rid of the shit. But again, in my opinion, if this guy doesn't have offspring, we're not getting involved in choosing heirs. But if we reformulated the constitution... so it's perfect and it's what we want and it's exactly in sync with English law as was, wouldn't that be a jolly good thing to do for our future offspring, our nation, our people, and for the world at large, because then we keep freedom in the mix? But we're not, because America right now is about to go full reverse. full reverse, and everybody will be going, well, about time. Okay, but you really don't get what's going to happen, do you? This is going to be a complete and utter Zionist right wing going on here. That's what's going to happen. So Muslims, you're going to be in some trouble, because I'll tell you now, the closest ally of all the Zionists here in this, on my land, are Zionists. Remember, Zionism was created as a religious movement, the religious side of it, on the notes of Cyrus Schofield. Not the biblical tradition, the notes. And the notes are contrary to the actual tradition. So if you're a Jehovah's Witness, a Mormon, a Masonic, Church of England as it is now, Vatican II, if you're holding up the Old Testament over and above the New Testament, it's because you believe the notes of Cyrus Schofield. You're going to have to excuse me, guys. My apologies, I really needed to get that out. It was driving me up the wall. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think for me, it depends on what Ivan is prepared to do in relation to, is he going to come in sync with what we've come to understand, because we know, we've read it, we've studied it, we know how the opposition works. Then maybe it will be a good idea to have another chat with Ivan in the future. But I take on all your concerns, and I understand you're correct to have those concerns. But we do need to be looking out for how are we going to... Because it's all right saying, oh, we get rid of Charles and all that, but they're only going to stick somebody else in. We have to think beyond just the fight, the battle, as in with words against this shindig. We also have to have a remedy on hand, otherwise it's a complete waste of time, and we're going to be no better off at all, are we? So it is important when it comes to people like Ivan and anybody. I mean, this is why I gave Greg Allert time of day. The guy made a big effort. He did a lot of graft and a lot of work. Okay, it didn't come to anything, but originally he wasn't putting himself up as a monarch, where he was putting up the guy in Portugal. It was when he got the treachery came about, then he turned it into this, I'll be king instead. So, but what I was saying originally is hereditary and all that, it's not really going to work well, is it? Whichever way, whoever you got in on that basis, because of course it's been so shifted, changed, name changed, etc. Nobody has a clue who's where and when. We just need a monarch that's upholding the realm and making sure everything else beneath it is going to do the same. What that realm is where we need to be a bit more. We need more clarity in relation to Ivan explaining. But again, like I said, I gave him plenty of information to chew on, and that's entirely up to Ivan. So I'm not sitting here saying today, let's all get behind Ivan. But now he's in a mix. He's in our mix. Other people know about him, and we've had a look at him. Let's wait and see. I don't know. Back to business. If we look at the etymology of the word Lon as the second part of Babylon or Babylon, we find some interesting meanings from the Middle Irish. Now, this is one of the definitions that didn't add up the deed put out, so I've gone with this one. We get some interesting meanings from the Middle Irish. We get chassis or concrals, which defines as gluttony, insatiable hunger, unquenchable thirst. Funokia translates lon as demon. So we're looking at baby demon, or baby hunger, baby insatiable, baby gluttony, baby thirst, or baby unquenchable thirst. We are also aware of the use of the term baby London, which offers a potential to understand the meaning of Babylon to be the reference of securing offspring for that other than the original creation. So of course it's this world, isn't it, as opposed to the earth. So where have we got here? Hang on a minute. I've got lost there. That's it. This would certainly support the actual system being set up across the globe under the command of the hidden elite and ruling bloodlines. Lon from the Swedish offers up salary, wage, stipend, screw. Again supports the idea that due to the ignorance of the mother and father, who became pair of rents or parents, and thus informed the state, they offer up a child as a sacrifice or a loan to the moon gods in order they receive a salary from the gods to benefit their own lives. Now, we know that in Carthage, in recent years, they've now found evidence that they did in fact sacrifice the children on Carthage to the gods, because they found a lot of paperwork, and they weren't just sacrificing, they were their own children. And they were doing it specifically to gain. Now that again works in satanic lore, where if you want to go higher and you're not of a specific bloodline, you will have to sacrifice your firstborn. It's the same with a lot of Masonic families. If you get too high, you'll notice your firstborn is a retard, or all of a sudden becomes super depressed, or not functioning correctly. And that's because that's the offer. That's what was offered up by the father that joined at an higher level. You need to understand these. This is how it works, folks. But that's the satanic side of it, yeah? Not necessarily the front of house masons that you see every day amongst you. So, where are we there? This is further evidence in the recent archaeological finds at Carthage that show the people of that place did indeed offer up their offspring to Molech for enrichment. This also works in the fact those wishing to advance the satanic system offer up the firstborn. And Gordon Brown, remember, and David Cameron, prime examples of the offering up of the firstborn. Yeah? So we could see that mechanic there. So as anti-Titus people think Cameron was eating all this and that, and as far as his bloodline goes, it wasn't that. It's his wife's bloodline that's more important. So there you go. Where are we going? Can we expect any other form of actions from such figures than to expand the system of Molech? So, you know, Gordon Brown, and Tony Blair front, David Cameron, you know, and then you got, who did you get? You got a woman, what's she called? Theresa May. Again, same position we've got now, not contracted to us. Then we got Boris, and then voted Boris in. He was contracted. This one isn't. And Charles has not taken the coronation oath. He's not Charles III. And that's it. So, let's have a look. Once the offering of the offspring to Moloch is satisfied, the system presents this reality in the all caps title, so once you've registered, denoting the child to be dead, and thus another battery incorporated to wage war against itself as man. So as soon as you're operating on person, you're operating against yourself, basically. So it's consensual, innit? So you can understand how this satanic system is actually there to test us. Which is why it has such power. Capitis diminutio maxima, the highest or most comprehensive loss of status. This occurs when a man's condition was changed from one of freedom to one of bondage. When he becomes a slave, it's swept away with all the rights of citizenship and all the family rights, and that's capitis. Capitis is Latin for civil rights, life, and source. Clearly, the world of person can be said to be in a trance. Thus, we are the transactions or transactions in commerce based entirely on charges to the battery we have become. The word liquidation means to eliminate, to pay off a debt. When used in conjunction with the birth of a child, they are mixing the idea of the birth canal, from which, if not born by caesarean section, we all traverse as we enter this reality. So we all have to go through the cervix, don't we? And if we don't, we're classed as not being born of woman. In essence, the world under Satan has set up a system in which by default we have our manhood eliminated in order we serve the debt that is the world created by the moon gods to keep it afloat on the holy sea. Capital can thus be said to be cap it all, as you are turning to nothing other than a capital money with the moon gods within the moon gods world. We can also use the word caput, as in caput all, derived from the Latin word caput, which translates as head, chapter, life, capital, mind, judgment, and individual. From the definition given head, we can perhaps see the use of the term decapitation as being used within the Noahide system, which it is, to sanction such against those deemed unworthy in the satisfaction of Noahide laws. Of course, such discrimination is to be set against the Gentiles or those not said to belong to the Babylonian priesthood. So that's everybody, except. Another synonym for caput is capitis, which relates to the Latin root of pf capitum. I don't know whether that pf is, I shouldn't have put that there, no. And also capite, which translates into the English as fodder. From this we can see why the priesthood floated your birth certificate on the stock market from the 1930s bankruptcies. You are the livestock used to feed with your energy the moon gods of this world, and not the earth, I'll put in brackets. The pyramid structure takes on a new symbolism when we see how everything created by the moon gods through their priesthood is referencing the fact all energy is raised to the top of the pyramid to serve the eye that looks through the moon upon the world of person. The dead are marked in the uppercase on a tombstone or wall if they fail to break out of the prison. This can be said to denote, so this is again my stuff, this can be said to denote the debt still active and must transmigrate back before the moon gods until the debt is discharged. The phoenix is not the eagle, the phoenix being symbolic of the opportunity to be born again, freed from the debt to Saturn. You rise from the ashes into a new being. The phoenix is the deconstruction of the debt. Either you break free and rise from the ashes, or you burn the biological suit and move back to in hoc or in debt, and you are on your way to an inter-rest. So if you don't get away, you fail, you're going to come back again, and you're going to be classed as having an interest. So you're still on the game and you're going to come back. The suffix of est, as in inter-est, is the French and Italian word for east, which moves the focus, the old prophecy of the anti-lied figure, which moves into the focus, the old prophecy of the anti-lied figure being a man of the east. And Nostradamus talks about it all the time. Dead in Saturn, one can say you are on ice. And if we take the Old Norse sagas and lore, we learn that hell is in fact ice cold. So yeah, the old pagan Norse gods' version of hell was ice cold, not hot. The contrary to that gives us not ice or notice. Yeah, so that's where I found it rather interesting. We can also explore off ice, as in office. Yeah, off the ice, as yet another expression of status. If we change the words to OF and then FICE, so it's still office, but there's only O and F, and then instead of it ice, it's FICE, we get divine office, or a ceremony for the dead. So that I thought were interesting as well. A major, so you are classed as person, aren't you? So you're in the dead if you're holding office as well. So it still fits in with this mimic system that they've got set going. A major part of the system of the damned is the method of having you take on more debt. The most obscene of which is the mortgage, from the French mort, which defines as death, and gage translates as pledge. Thus, to buy a mortgage, which is what you actually buy when you sign your life away by entering into a death pledge. So a mortgage is a death pledge. Can you disearn yourself through the natural process, or must you fake it by joining the secret society? So the only way out of this isn't to join secret societies, because they still capitalise on your energy, but keeping you thinking you're moving in the right direction. You have to do it as a natural process. From the Latin we find dis to mean lack of, opposite of, apart, asunder. And as a living prefix in English, it reverses or negates what it is affixed to. Yeah? So that's dis. His translation was incorrect. So, the regeneration of the dead sun is told. So we're looking at the moon maybe as the dead sun, because there used to be two suns, didn't there? When you look back in historic lore. So it's looking, and the moon wasn't there before, was it? But lo and behold, when the firmament disappeared, we'd lost the sun and gained this moon thing. Is that what they're saying when they're talking about it being a dead sun? And why the Bible calls it the lesser light? You know? Interesting. The regeneration of the dead sun is told in the... What it says sport. It should say story of Hiram Abiff, who was killed before he could complete his temple. Building the temple of Sol-On is the prime motive of the fifth science, that is Freemasonry. It is the reason we have Isis Ra El, Israel, as the matrix metonymy for all the collected electrical energy from those in the world to awaken again the dead sun. This is the function of the Noahide system. So this is why it's being shifted. Under this false mimic system that they've got going, it's going to be pulled together in this Noahide system and run out of Israel. Yeah, so that's another explanation as to why it's being moved that way. So I don't know why I've got that there. Anyway, I need to go over this report actually that I've put together, and that no, wait a minute. The change from Sol, as in Solomon, to Sal, as in Solomon, is appropriate too. The word sal from the Latin means salt. Salt is a great conductor of electricity, which is why we need it to stay healthy, keeping our electrolytes communicating correctly. Back to commerce, in which everything is about the charges we earn, or sal Uries, salt of Uries, giving us the well-known phrase to be worth his salt. So I thought that again makes sense, so I employed that. But everything else on that data, I didn't think it were appropriate, to be quite honest. So that thus ends it, and what I've done on the page is given you some data on the SESQV Trust, which is the person, the birth certificate, etc. So that ends the etymology in that lot. I will have a look at the second one and see if I can add to that. But I do think you were winging it quite a bit as well, so I'm not so sure it's as important as it may look on the... But you get it, don't you? You can see the misuse of words, how they use it, and potentially that could be sort of the hidden theology behind it, I suppose. So what are you guys saying in relation to what's been said this evening? So it might be a good idea if you're actually asking me a question, maybe you do it in all caps, and then I can see it specifically as a question and not going through everybody's conversations. That might make it a little bit better. So if anybody does have any questions, because I'm not saying Ivan's the man, you know, we need to know. We just need to explore these things. Because I didn't really know anything about him. I'd heard about him last year, I think a friend told me, and said that I said I'd look, but I actually never did. I never got round to it. So why not? Let's have a look. When nobody's saying yeah or nay to anything, are we? We need to know where he's at. If Ivan isn't so terrible, can you work on him, Sean? Well, it's nothing to do with me whether I can work on him. It's to what length is Ivan prepared to sift through the bunkum that we've all been fed and get to the nitty-gritty of it. Because you're not going to get anybody on the throne that's outside their pickings unless it's got the full backing of the English. Let's be true about it. I mean, even the Scottish should jump on board with it. Because we are one. I know we're two separate nations, but we're one people. All right, we don't chase Irish hens and then blow them up and use them as a bagpipe. But, you know, if that's the only difference between me and Jocks, I'm happy with that. I love the Jocks, mate. I get on with Jocks all the time. They're great people. You know what I mean? Yeah, but we all live on the same land, don't we? So, I don't know. But if you're just going to let them walk all over us with these shenanigans that they're going to play between now and while you're all busy starving and maybe not having any gas and electric, you know, nobody else is playing this game, is it, apart from Yonmon? What's he called? I forgot his name. Full English. I forgot his name. But he's big on Constitution. And he knows what he's talking about when it comes to Constitution. But yeah, there's not that many people actually looking at this kind of stuff. They're too focused to the on-the-ground war and killing the left so they can bring up the right. Remember, left and right are controlled by the same priesthood. They've just, you know, we've seen the extreme of the left, well, nearly. We haven't. The extreme of the left is full-blown communism. The extreme of the right is fascism. The ultimate aim for this new world order is to have a system that is full-blown communist fascism. Yeah, that's why the only two sides of the coin you're getting is communism and casino. Because we can't call it capitalism. Capitalism in its essence is a good thing, as is a good, solid, nationalised state. And essential domestic requirements, such as your energy, your land. Your land should never, any part of it should ever be owned by a foreign entity, whether it's by trust or not. That is against English law. So this is what we need to understand, and we need to understand that such as Ivan or whomever also understands. Otherwise, we're not interested, are we? We're not in the slightest bit interested. Our parallel system. Our parallel system is just English constitutional laws we understood it, not the shenanigans that they've played with it. So it's already there. Our ancestors have already built it. We just have forgotten it and left it to rot. So I felt Sean lost interest in him near the end of the video. It wasn't so much that I lost interest, but I could see clearly that it's a big ask of a guy like Ivan to get such as us on board, or people that really have done the research and understand. Not only do we understand the blag that's been played in our realm, but we also understand the blags that have been playing out all over the biblical tradition. That's the most important one. By far. Because you can't... Charles's oath to the Church of England. The Church of England is absolutely nothing that it was when it was set up. Nothing like it at all. And that's what we need to get to grips. And anybody that wants to put this hell up for that role has to understand that. But me personally, let's say I ended up... All I'd be doing is doing what I said before, which is pulling it back together, recreating it in a correct format, and then I'd abdicate and put that on the throne. That's what I'd do. So we just need somebody that has some kind of capacity, whereas the elder generation would accept it as feasible because it's hereditary. Ivan is that man. This sort of Simon that they want to put up there, in my opinion, is just to further debauch the idea of the English realm properly by having these fakes on it, these people that have just done nothing but attack it, debauch it, oppose it, throw it out the window, you know. That's what we don't want. No, stuff is very bad. It's very, very, very bad. And again, going through that etymology, we can see that you are actually sacrificing your offspring when you register them because of this mimic system they've got. You know, who's sacrificing their children to Molech? Do you know what I mean? Because the vision you have when you talk about that subject is that they're actually throwing them in a fire. I explored it in a report on the website where... how did I explore that? I forgot. I explored it in another potential anagram of the story. I can't remember it offhand. I seem to be I'm seem to be losing a lot of the data I used to have there all the time. Truth is sovereign. Is made in liver, but can buy corn. Okay. All right, you guys chatting amongst yourself, no problem. So a wise man once said, "The kingdom of heaven does not come with signs to be seen, for the kingdom of heaven is within you." That is it. It is. I mean, you know, this is another thing, and everybody needs to look at this. How many of you actually, at any given time, have ever sat down and just thought to yourself, what parts of my being are fruit bat? It's not an easy game. It's not an easy game. It really isn't. Because we don't like the answers. And most people go, whereas I went, "You absolute dick," to myself, laughed my head off, and then worked out a format to which I wouldn't do it again. And there was a meaning to that, I don't know where we've gone. So, yeah, the kingdom of... Oh, that's where I was going. So if you would take everybody in general, text the guide of how well they're doing in life from the outside, do they not? And you do. You know, if you bring it down, start whittling it down and ask yourself them questions, you'll find that there's a big part of you where, in its entirety, is governed from the world outside of yourself. The only marker to give a shit about is your heart. How does it work with you? Your conscience, your heart. Yeah? That's the kingdom within, isn't it? You're not on the kingdom within if everything you take for points of reference is coming from the outside. By definition of that fact. Sorry, the truth is simple. And it is. Implementing it is the difficult part. Because you have to undo the programming that you subconsciously are off with all the time without giving it a thought. So yeah. And the temple itself is your body. You're bringing it into tune. If you use a Horus Ra symbolism, you're bringing the child that you are, that you've been down here, to a point that you're merging it with the Creator's energies, or Ra. We're not talking about that in the negative. We're talking about it in its purest form. And that's another... So both endpoints are leading to that fact as truth, as a reality. And it's a simple concept. But implementing it, as we all know, isn't a good idea. Now, chaps, I don't think we've done too bad, actually, to say the shit I've had this week, electric-wise, especially today, not being able to go on it at all, and pull any as I usually pull. I used to pull in Ukraine and stuff so we can go through it, but didn't have that capacity today. So, but I will say, with that, chaps and ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have to say to you, have a good week, and till the next time. Bye.